There was a time when everything in my life felt like clockwork, predictable, even routine. But isn't that how it always is before a disaster strikes? You don't notice the cracks until you're already wading through the wreckage. The cruel irony is that it all started on a day as ordinary as any other. It was a typical evening. I had just returned from the gym, completely wiped out and dripping with sweat. The workout burn was supposed to distract me from the monotony of my life, but no amount of weightlifting could have prepared me for what was waiting for me at home. There she was, standing in the kitchen, casually sipping a glass of wine like it was just another uneventful Wednesday. The scent of those overpriced candles she loved filled the room, lavender, her favorite. She was smiling, but something about that smile felt off. It was too much, like she was in on some private joke I hadn't been invited to. I could sense something wasn't right, but I didn't ask. I should have, though. Instead, I grabbed a beer, leaned against the counter, and asked her how her day was, same as I always did. It was the kind of mundane question that usually ends with a standard reply, "Good, how about yours?" But not tonight. Tonight, she barely acknowledged me, glued to her phone. I almost let it slide, chalking it up to just another distraction. Then I saw it, a name on her screen, Adam. Not just any Adam, either. This was the co-worker Adam, the one she had mentioned a few times over the past couple of months. The great guy to bounce ideas off of, Adam. I tried to brush it off at first. Just work stuff, right? But something about it nagged at me. So, I asked her, trying to keep it casual, "You and Adam seem to be chatting a lot lately. What's going on with him?" That's when I noticed it, just a flicker of hesitation. She quickly brushed it off, but I caught it. "Oh, it's just work stuff," she said, almost too fast, like she was dismissing me before I could even think about pressing further. Her eyes avoided mine, which only made the knot in my gut tighten. I wanted to believe her, I really did. But there was something off in her voice, something rehearsed. So, I played dumb. I nodded, shrugged, pretended her answer was enough. But inside, I was already starting to connect dots that hadn't been there before tonight. Later that night, when she went to bed early, claiming she was exhausted from work, I stayed up pretending to watch TV. But my mind was racing. I grabbed her phone. Yeah, I know how that sounds, but sometimes your gut tells you something you just can't ignore, no daver how guilty it makes you feel. And what I found, it wasn't just work talk. It was something else entirely. Full-blown emotional affair. Messages like, "I can't wait to see you again." And guess when they were planning their next meeting? Friday. The same day she told me she'd be working late. In that moment, I didn't know what to do, but I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going to sit around playing the fool. I didn't sleep that night, how could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those messages flashing like neon signs in my mind. "I miss you. Last night was incredible. Can't wait for Friday." I wasn't the kind of guy who just cries into a pillow. No, I was the type who starts planning, plotting, figuring out how to handle the situation the right way. If she thought she could play me for a fool, she had no idea who she was dealing with. Friday was my deadline, 3 days to come up with a plan that would blow her little secret sky high. And trust me, I was going to be the one holding the match. But first, I needed to know if this wasn't just some emotional fling. Had it already crossed the line into something more? I called in sick to work the next day and didn't even tell her. I wanted her to think everything was normal, that I was clueless. After she left for work, I got to work myself. I started digging. She never imagined I'd go through our shared iCloud. She never considered that every photo, every message, every location, was backed up. The thing about betrayal is people get cocky, thinking they're too clever to get caught. She was no different. Within minutes, I found it all, pictures, calls, locations. Every dirty little secret she had been hiding from me. They had been meeting for months. Months. And yet she had the nerve to sit across from me at our dinner table night after night, acting like everything was fine. What really got to me wasn't even the photos or the texts. It was what she said about me. He has no idea. I told him I'm working late again, poor guy. That's all I was to her now. Some poor, clueless idiot while she got cozy with another man behind my back. I'll admit, I wanted to storm into her office right then and there, cause a scene, scream at her, rip her world apart. But that would have been too easy, too quick. I wasn't going to make a mess. I was going to set the stage for her to fall apart on her own. So, I called an old buddy of mine, Dave. He's a private investigator now, and we've stayed close over the years. He owed me a couple of favors, and this was the perfect time to cash them in. I asked him to follow her, document everything. I didn't want to leave a single stone unturned. She was a creature of habit, after all. If she thought she could lie her way through this affair, I wanted every detail. Dave didn't ask many questions, just agreed to help. I told him to keep a close eye on her, especially on Friday, the day everything was supposed to go down. While Dave was doing his part, I was setting up my own little trap at home. I prepped the house with cameras hidden in the kitchen, living room, and bedroom. Call me paranoid, but I wasn't about to let anything slip through the cracks. That night, she came home, kissed me on the cheek, and said she was exhausted from work. I had to force myself not to flinch at her audacity. She had no idea I had already seen the photos, already knew what exhausted really meant. But I played it cool, didn't give anything away. Before heading to bed, she even mentioned she might have to work late again on Friday. Another big meeting with the team, she said. I smiled, told her to take her time. I had plans of my own. Friday was coming fast, and she had no clue what was about to hit her. Friday came faster than I expected, but not fast enough for the fire that had been building inside me all week. Every moment spent pretending to be the clueless husband had been torture. Watching her move around the house, smiling, acting like everything was fine, while I knew the truth, I could hardly stand it. But today was the day. Today, it was showtime. She woke up early, showered, and came downstairs looking like she was ready to conquer the world. Dressed to the nines, perfect makeup, even wore the dress I'd bought her for our last anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. I complimented her, playing my part, told her she looked beautiful. She smiled and thanked me, checking her phone constantly, probably waiting for Adam's confirmation. Then, almost on cue, she casually mentioned she might be home late again, big meeting with the team. I nodded, pretended not to care. Take your time, I said, my voice calm, even. Inside, I was already picturing the fallout that was about to happen. As soon as she walked out the door, I grabbed my phone. Dave had already texted me, she's on the move. I'll keep you posted. I waited, pacing the house, mentally running through every step of what was about to go down. The cameras were already in place, ready to capture every detail. I wasn't just going to confront her, I was going to have proof, hard evidence she couldn't deny or twist. No more lies. No more games. Around noon, Dave sent me another text, they've met up. Hotel downtown. It's confirmed. I stared at the message for a long moment, knowing what was happening while she was supposed to be working late. She wasn't in some meeting with her team, she was with Adam, likely wrapped around him in some cheap hotel room. The rage simmered just below the surface, but I forced it down. Not yet. I needed to stay in control, keep my head clear. Dave sent me a few pictures a little later. There they were, strolling into the hotel lobby like they didn't have a care in the world. Her hand resting on his arm, smiling like they were a couple on vacation, not two married people sneaking around behind their spouses' backs. It made me sick, but I wasn't going to crash their little rendezvous. No, I had bigger plans. Hours passed, and around 6, Dave sent another message, she's on her way home. The stage was set. I sat in the living room, casually flipping through a magazine, pretending like it was just another normal night. The key turned in the lock, and she walked in, looking composed, like nothing had happened. "Long day?" she asked, setting her purse down, her face perfectly calm, not a trace of guilt. "Yeah, mine too," I replied, smiling as I motioned to the dinner I'd made. She seemed surprised, maybe even a little guilty, but it passed quickly, replaced with that fake smile. "You didn't have to do that," she said, walking over to kiss me on the cheek. I had to stop myself from flinching, knowing those lips had probably been all over Adam just hours earlier. We sat down to eat, and I let her talk. I let her tell me all about her meeting, nodding along, smiling in all the right places. The tension in me was building, every word she spoke felt like another twist of the knife, but I kept my cool. Then, I dropped the first bombshell. "So, how's Adam?" I asked, cutting into my food. Her fork froze mid-air, and for the first time all night, I saw real panic flash in her eyes. "Adam," she repeated, her voice shaky, like she was trying to stall for time. "What do you mean?" she asked, too quickly, her eyes widening just a bit. "Oh, you know," I said, leaning back in my chair, my voice casual. "I figured he must have been at your big meeting today, considering how much you two talk." I watched her carefully, enjoying the way her fake confidence crumbled for just a second before she recovered. She forced a nervous laugh, shaking her head. No, he wasn't there, just the team." "Liar." I felt the anger bubbling up, but I kept my voice calm. "Really?" "Because my buddy Dave, remember him? The private investigator I had tell you, he says otherwise." Her face went white as a sheet. She froze, eyes wide, like a deer caught in headlights. I could almost hear her mind racing, trying to come up with something, anything to dig herself out of the mess she had made. "What? What are you talking about?" she stammered, dropping her fork onto her plate with a loud clink. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "I know everything. The texts, the hotel, Adam. Every last lie you've been feeding me." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For months, she had been so confident, so sure she could play me for a fool. Now, she was scrambling, completely at a loss for words. I could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. She finally whispered, "You're lying." Her voice was shaky, eyes darting toward the door like she was trying to figure out an escape route. "There's no private investigator, you're paranoid." I let out a low, bitter laugh. "Paranoid, huh? You really think I'm making this up?" I pulled my phone out of my pocket and scrolled through the pictures Dave had sent me earlier. Tossing the phone onto the table, I leaned back, crossing my arms as I watched her face twist in horror. There it was, proof. Photos of her and Adam, walking hand in hand into the hotel. Another of them at the hotel bar, looking way too close for comfort. The final one, her leaning in for a kiss outside the hotel. There was no talking her way out of this now. Her hands shook as she grabbed the phone, flipping through the pictures, her face growing paler with each one. By the time she reached the last one, her entire demeanor had crumbled. I can explain," she stuttered, her voice weak, desperate. "It's not what it looks like. I swear, we didn't. We didn't actually do anything. We were just talking." "Talking?" I repeated coldly, leaning forward. "That's your story? You didn't actually do anything?" She nodded frantically, eyes wide, looking more and more like a trapped animal. "It was just emotional. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I felt disconnected. You were always busy, and I needed someone to talk to." "Disconnected?" I almost laughed again, but this time in disbelief. That's what she was going with. "So, you decided to screw around with Adam because you felt disconnected?" I asked, my voice icy. I wasn't screwing anyone, she snapped, her voice rising, her temper flaring up out of nowhere. I didn't sleep with him. The anger in her voice caught me off guard, but it didn't faze me. I knew the truth. You expect me to believe that after everything I've seen? I said, standing up from the table. Do you really think I'm that stupid? You've been sneaking around for months, lying to my face, and now you want me to believe it was just talking? She got up too, her eyes filling with tears, her voice trembling with desperation. Please, listen to me. I didn't want this to happen. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. I looked at her, feeling nothing but disgust. The woman I thought I knew had turned into a stranger right before my eyes. I crossed my arms and spoke, my voice cold and steady. Was it a mistake when you laughed about me in your texts? When you called me the poor guy? Did you feel guilty then? Her face twisted in shock, like I had slapped her. She hadn't realized I'd seen everything. Yeah, I said, my voice hard, I saw all of it. Every little message, every joke you made about how clueless I was. How easy it was to lie to me. Tears were streaming down her face now, but I wasn't moved. I had seen this act before. I didn't mean it, she choked out, stepping closer, reaching for my arm. I was just confused. It didn't mean anything. Please, you have to believe me. I pulled my arm away, shaking my head. Believe you? After everything I've seen? She dropped to the floor, sobbing into her hands, but I felt nothing. There was no sympathy left in me. I had given her every chance, and she had thrown it all away. I stood over her, my voice calm and firm. Get up, I said, looking down at her. She lifted her tear-streaked face, confusion in her eyes. What? Get up, I repeated. We're not done yet. She slowly stood, her body trembling, and I knew what was coming next would destroy any shred of her world she had left. She stood there, looking broken, her face streaked with tears, eyes red and swollen. But I wasn't moved. This was the moment I had been building toward, the moment where I flipped everything upside down, and she'd have no way to escape. Sit down, I said, my voice cold and steady. She hesitated, probably sensing something worse was coming, but eventually, she sat back down, dabbing her face with a napkin. I watched her closely, not out of concern, but to see the last shred of her lies crumble. I've already spoken to Adam's wife, I said, each word sharp as a blade. Her head snapped up, her face a mask of horror. What? What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Yeah, I continued, leaning forward slightly, savoring every second. I spoke to her 3 days ago. She knows everything. The look of sheer panic that washed over her was priceless. Her lips trembled as she tried to form some kind of response, but nothing came out. I let the silence hang for a moment, letting her process the weight of what I had just dropped on her. You see, I said, my tone calm but lethal, this wasn't just about catching you in the act. No, I wanted everyone involved to know the truth. You and Adam thought you could live in this little fantasy world, sneaking around behind our backs. But guess what? His wife knows, and trust me, she's not too thrilled about finding out her husband's been screwing around. She shook her head violently, her hands gripping the edge of the table as if trying to hold on to whatever little control she had left. No, you didn't. You can't. I did, I interrupted. I sent her all the photos, all the texts, every dirty little detail. And from what I hear, Adam is getting the same treatment from her that you're getting right now. Her face went pale again, and I could see the gears turning in her head, the realization that her life was about to implode. She wasn't just losing me, she was about to lose everything. You've ruined me, she said, her voice breaking, as if I was the one to blame for this mess. You've ruined my life. I nearly laughed at her sheer audacity. I ruined your life. I said, standing up and staring down at her. You did this. You ruined your life the second you decided to betray me. She stood up suddenly, knocking the chair back in her panic. Her eyes were wild, desperate. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't think it would go this far. Adam and I was confused. You didn't care about me anymore. You didn't love me the way you used to. There it was again, her trying to twist everything into being my fault. I felt the frustration boiling over. So that's your excuse? I snapped, my voice cold. You didn't feel loved, so you went and found it with someone else's husband? She screamed, her voice cracking as her emotions spilled over. I was lonely. I needed something. You were always so distant, so caught up in everything else. Adam listened to me, made me feel wanted. Do you have any idea what that feels like? The room went dead silent after her outburst. Her words hung in the air, her voice trembling, but all I could feel was cold, empty disgust. She had thrown away everything we had, and now she wanted me to believe that her loneliness justified it. I took a deep breath, letting the silence stretch before speaking again, my voice calm but deadly. Do you even hear yourself right now? You think I'm going to sit here and listen to this crap about how you felt unloved? We've all had rough patches, every couple does. But you didn't come to me. You didn't try to fix anything. You ran straight to him. Her lip quivered, but she stayed quiet, knowing there was nothing she could say to justify it. You had a choice, I continued, leaning in closer. You could have talked to me. We could have worked through whatever you were feeling. But instead, you chose to destroy everything we built. So don't stand there and tell me I ruined your life. You did this. And now, you're going to face the consequences. She stood there, silent, small, tears still streaming down her face, but her excuses had finally run out. I pulled out my phone one last time, tapping the screen before placing it face up on the table. You might want to listen to this, I said, pressing play. It was a recording, her and Adam from their last meeting in the hotel. Their voices filled the room. Her soft laugh, his murmurs, the way they spoke to each other like they were the only two people in the world. They had no idea they were being recorded. Her face drained of color, horror taking over as she realized what she was hearing. How did you? I smiled coldly. Remember that little Bluetooth speaker you keep in your purse? I borrowed it for a bit. You never even checked it before heading off to your meetings. Her composure shattered. There was no denying it anymore. No more lies. No more excuses. It was over. I'm filing for divorce, I said, my voice firm and steady. And I suggest you pack your things. You're spending the night somewhere else. She didn't argue. She didn't fight. She just stood there, defeated, staring at the floor, knowing her world had crumbled beyond repair.